Aaron Chiles is back for the Florida Gators. So is Miles Graham. That means the Florida Gators are going to get both of their big-time linebackers back for 2026. Great news that we desperately needed right now after a definitely rough last few seasons. Definitely some reason to feel optimistic heading into 2026 for the Florida Gators. Optimism is something we have not had a lot of, and it is great to finally have some now. Welcome back to the In All Kinds of Weather Forecast. I'm your host, Neil Shulman, at All Kinds Weather on Instagram and Twitter. Gator Diamond Pod is where you'll find Adrian Perez, our co-host. You'll also find him at ADNDEL for his non-stickball related stuff, but stickball is a year-round thing. Kevin O'Sullivan was just he did just announce his return to the Florida Gator baseball team. And of course, we're not that far away from the season starting for Gator baseball. So those guys, Adrian and Chris Urich, are going to be pretty busy coming up soon. So be sure to give them a follow at Gator Diamond Pod as well. Adrian, we do have some somber news to start the show with. Actually, two different pieces of news, one of which has been kind of hanging over Gator Nation for a few days now. But the passing of Jon Sumrall's father is something that I don't think he really expected to happen right then and there. Obviously, everyone has their time to go, but I think it was the timing of it that brought such sadness upon Coach Sumrall. And as he comes to Gainesville from Tulane, and obviously Tulane losing that playoff game, which turned out to be his finale, just not the best 24, 48-hour stretch for him. And obviously we want to wish him the best because there is a lot more to life than football as we're talking about a game, but there are people behind it, and we do wish him all the best.
Yeah, no doubt, man, especially during this time of year, obviously the Christmas holiday season and stuff like that. Had to be so tough for him. He had two full-time jobs, and then to have one of your parents pass away. I believe I read that the funeral was today. So, prayers off to him and his family, and hopefully they could get through here with the holiday season as best they could.
Yeah, that's the sad news. And then we get to the absolutely catastrophic news of former Florida Gator president or UF president Ben Sasse, who's only 53 years old, has terminal pancreatic cancer, metastasized as stage 4 pancreatic cancer. That's the end for him. As he said, he literally wrote in his statement, "I'm gonna die." And he says, "I've received a death sentence." Those are his words right off of his post on social media. So obviously that's a conclusion that I think is not crazy for the average person to draw when reading, stage 4 terminal cancer, or even just stage 4 pancreatic cancer, period. But then to hear or to read the words that he writes saying, "I'm going to die." And then later on in the statement, no parent, or that he has to explain to his daughters, "I'm not going to walk you down the aisle. And then I'm going to have to explain to my parents, like, they're going to have to bury their son." Like that is just unspeakably terrible. And even if he wasn't the UF president, like that would be something that I think most of us would certainly take a second to feel some solemnness for. And the fact that he did hold the role as University of Florida president for about a year and a half, I think makes this hit a little more home, because it is something that you never want to hear, but especially at 53 years old, that is just, that's a tragedy. It's Jon Sumrall's dad passing was sad. This is a tragedy.
Yeah.
And they just happened back to back.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously a husband, a father. He's got 3 kids, 2 girls, 1 boy. Saw him. I've met him twice. One time was when I was with you at the baseball game.
That's right.
I also saw him another time at a softball game with his daughter, actually. Both times I said hello to him. I mean, he could not be any nicer, any more of a decent person. I had funny story, kind of, because it just puts life in perspective. I had just finished getting upset at my wife because she got the wrong mustard. I was making something for lunch and I needed Dijon, and she brought spicy brown, and I got upset at her about that. And literally like a minute later, I see the news on the TV, on the newscast. And it puts life in perspective. It really does. And then I really encourage anybody out there to read his social media posting that Mr. Sasse put out there. Unbelievable, uh, inspiring, sad, heartwarming, you know, in some ways joyful type of post. And, you know, I encourage everybody to go out there and just have a read at it. So wish him and his family the best. I hope and pray for a miracle for him. But it was really tough news today to get that. Kind of bummed me out the whole day, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there are just some days you remember where you are for not a great reason. Like I remember where I was on September 11th, for example. I was in class in northern New Jersey. We were 20 miles away from where all that went down with the World Trade Center, and I just remember a pall settling over the room when we were told about it. This was another one of those days. It obviously not quite the scale of that, but the sadness that comes over you when the gravity of what has happened just hit you, however long it takes for that gravity to hit you, it hurts for a little bit. And you mentioned me talking to him at the baseball game. We had a good conversation. We talked for 20 minutes that he didn't have to give me. Who the hell am I? He didn't know I was in all kinds of weather. I told him at the end, and then he was like, "Oh yeah. I actually have read your stuff before. It's fun stuff." He called it a fun site. I don't know if that's a euphemism for you're a little more critical of the Gators than I'd like you to be, but that's what he said. He said it's a fun site. And then after I told him, his demeanor and tone didn't change at all, for better or worse. He was the same guy. We had an equally good wrap up to the conversation before I decided, he's here with his wife. Let's just leave him and have had that time with his wife. And I went back to you, and we wound up watching the rest of the game together. But that's just who he was, man. Like, he doesn't treat you different based on if you're a social media influencer, big platform, whatever you want to call, whatever you want to think of in all kinds of weather as. He doesn't treat you any different based on if you have any clout or fame or popularity or any of those words. He treats everyone exactly with the same amount of respect. So I appreciated that from him, and especially the way that this is going down right in the season of joy and the season of giving. It hurts. It's something that is not easy to swallow, but we're going to try to move on and talk about other stuff today on the show. Jon Sumrall, of course, has put a bow on his staff at Florida. We're going to talk about that in no shortage of detail. We're going to shout out our sponsor first and foremost, 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. And something else I should probably tack on to that ad read too. I mean, as we're talking about Ben Sasse, and he talks about in his social media post that he told everyone to go read. He talks about how there's a lot of gallows humor in his home. There's a big difference between death itself and the act of dying, right? Which dying is still technically living because you haven't died yet. And he talks about it in more detail. Again, as Adrian said, go read it. But something to keep in mind, 401k Generation, they are equipped to handle situations of all walks of life. If you're a 15-year-old and you just want to start building up your portfolio, or if you're towards the end of your life, whatever age you may be at, and you want to make sure that your kids and grandkids are set up for success as well, they're equipped to handle all those different kinds of situations. So go ahead and reach out to them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. We're going to move on to some more positive topics today. We had to got to talk about that to start with because it was important, and it is breaking news, at least the Sasse piece is. But we're going to get on to the good stuff now, which, Dustin, go ahead and flip that graphic, our graphics guy behind the scenes here, to Aaron Chiles, returning to the Florida Gators, as we said at the very start, joining Myles Graham in doing so. Florida now has both of their big-time linebackers back for 2026. This just broke a couple hours ago. We're recording this late at night on Tuesday, so had a couple hours to digest it, but it'll still be less than 24 hours old when this hits. Adrian, your reaction to the return of Aaron Chiles?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's still kind of funny to get used to these announcements of players returning. I mean, it's happened so fast, obviously, right? Think about 5 years ago if someone told you that players would be announcing that they've re-signed, from their sophomore to their junior year, or junior to senior or whatnot. Just takes a little something to get used to.
Well, junior to senior makes sense because then you have to consider the NFL draft, but yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, to the football aspect of it, hey, man, listen, quite the three-headed monster that Florida had there this year. I think all three of these guys are NFL players, man. Obviously Graham, Chiles, I think Jaden Robinson is an NFL player. Honestly, they are a three-headed monster. Like, who are your starters, right? I guess it's Myles and Robinson sometimes, then Myles and Chiles. So great three-headed monster. Like I say, bringing them back, they'll be the spearhead of your defense. The new defense coordinator is going to probably build his defense around these three guys, the linebacking core, and I think he's going to do a heck of a job with doing that. And Aaron Chiles, man, he's going into his junior year, right? True junior. And Graham is going into his true junior. And Robinson's a redshirt junior, correct?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. So, three guys going into what they call their money years, pretty much. And I think all three of them could be drafted into the NFL next year. You probably will, to be honest with you. So, great pickup for Florida, keeping them in the fold, and the other two guys as well. And you just take off from there, man.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about continuity a lot, and it's one thing if you have a guy who produces to the degree that Jordan Castell produced. Like, he did some good things, but he left a lot to be desired. DJ Lagway did some good things, did a lot of other things that were good for the other team. So you kind of take those with, all right, maybe he develops next year, maybe he takes that step forward because of the continuity, but you don't really know that for sure. Could happen, but it's a question mark. There's no question here. This is unquestionably going to be a tremendous linebacking core. Jaden Robinson obviously is a little bit different of a player than Myles Graham and Aaron Chiles, but you're right. Between the three, I probably should have included him even in the lead here. That three-headed monster there, Jaden Robinson, Aaron Chiles, Myles Graham, is going to make for a ferocious linebacking core heading into 2026. Of course, you have to now put your hands together and pray that they stay healthy, because that can always derail a season before it even starts. But with that caveat in place, this should be a very, very difficult linebacking core for opponents to have to game plan around. So we'll talk more about the transfer portal in a couple of days. We're going to wait, obviously, for the Jaden Ball news that's going to happen today, as this is going to get released on Wednesday. But definitely wanted to start the show by talking about this big news. Aaron Chiles, Jaden Robinson, and Myles Graham are all back for Florida in 2026. So that's great. That is great news for Florida. And now we start to talk about the coaches, the main topic of this show. Jon Sumrall has officially put a bow on his coaching staff at Florida for 2026, to use a Christmassy term. He has wrapped up his 2026 staff. So we previously talked about the coordinators, talked about Buster Faulkner from Georgia Tech, talked about Brad White coming over from Kentucky, broke down what they do a little bit. We'll have a whole offseason to talk about what they do a little bit more and then a lot more. But for now, for this show, let's go position by position, because we do have them all now, position by position, and we're going to grade the hires. And one thing let's keep in mind is as best as possible, let's try to grade the hires on their own merit. What do I mean by that? Well, running backs coach, for example, I really, really wanted Florida to go get Robert Gillespie and bring him back home. They didn't do that. I thought, all right, well, if we're not going to do that, maybe go up north to Ann Arbor because they got a lot of turmoil going on there with Sharon Moore basically, Uber Eatsing abortion pills. So you got a problem there. Maybe their running backs coach Tony Alford wants out. I just stole a line from Kiffin's Cajun Cast there. That's one of the funniest things on the internet. But let's just try to grade Chris Foster for Chris Foster, as opposed to I'm disappointed that we didn't get either of those other two guys, because it is easy to do that. So let's start with the quarterbacks coach that Florida got. Florida gets Buster Faulkner, obviously, as the offensive coordinator. He will be working closely with quarterbacks coach Joe Craddock. Most recently, he worked with Jon Sumrall at Tulane. Before that, he worked with him at Troy. This past year at Tulane, Jake Retzloff threw for 3,168 yards. That is the 20th best in all of FBS. 15 touchdowns, 17 picks. Adrian, what kind of grade are we giving here for the hire of Joe Craddock?
Well, real quick, before I give that grade, man, listen, these coaches, all right, a couple of them are going to be superstars. A couple of them are going to be busts. And the rest of them will probably be somewhere in the middle between both of those extremes. That's just the way coaching staffs are, okay? Now, your head coach means a lot. Your coordinators mean a lot, okay? But as far as the position coaches go, those are tough, man. And how much do we really know about position coaches? Yeah, we do always know a little bit about some, and we could do research. But unless it's a name that you're very familiar with, you know, you really probably don't know too much about them. So always keep that in mind, okay? But let's throw some grades out here. Listen, the one thing that I saw about the quarterback coach here, just like on the defensive side of the ball, is that Sumrall got his coordinators to take position jobs with Florida. I think that is huge, man. With this guy, I gave it a solid B+. Not only because, A, he was coming down as the coordinator for Tulane, has that coordinator type of experience, but now you're teaming him up with Faulkner. Hey, we want Faulkner out of here in 2 years max. Why? Because that would be a good thing. Okay, so we want Faulkner out of here, and I think it'll be great for then this guy to step right on in there to that OC role, which I'm sure is what Sumrall's thinking, all right? He's thinking, hey, Faulk, give me 2 years. All right, teach this guy everything you know. Incorporate some of the stuff that you do with him, what he does with you. And then when you go get your head coaching gig, my guy who's been with me for the last 5 years steps in as the OC for the Florida Gators. And now he could do what he did, learning from what you do, and we just keep it going. And that's obviously how you want this to play out. So with all that being said, man, you get a OC for the last 2, 3, 4 years to come be your quarterback coach, slam dunk. So I say B+, really close to A, but B+ for now. Only because it was group of 5. If it was maybe a Power 4, Power 3, Power 2 conference, and this whole scenario plays out just like that, I would give it an A. But for a group of 5 guy, B+.
I mean, let's be real. The Power 4 itself is a misnomer. It's the SEC, the Big Ten, and then the huge drop-off, and then you can say the Big 12, and then the ACC, which is basically a one-team league this year with Miami, even though they somehow managed to still not qualify for the ACC championship game. But, of course, they won their first-round playoff game, so you can't really knock them too much for that anymore. But, you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, or you're just not a serious program unless you're, Clemson or I guess maybe Oklahoma State. There's a couple here or there, but no, he did not come from one of those types of programs. So to your point, yes. And also to your point, I think you use this term we're going to baseball now, but Chuck Giralman going to Tennessee, you called it a 1-year rental before he goes and gets his head coaching job. I think that's what this is, except maybe it's 2 years, but it's a rental. It's done. The move itself is made with the clear understanding that this is not going to be a long-term thing. So, like you said, I think that the plan is for Buster Faulkner to pass things off to Joe Craddock. I think that we got Craddock with the understanding that he was going to be the one that the reins get handed over to in 2 years. And so with that in mind, I like it. I think, again, Jake Retzloff throwing for 31.68, that's pretty damn good. Now I know that's Tulane. I will say, too, Retzlaff kind of fell into his lap because, well, frankly, because he dared to have sex at Brigham Young, which they threw you out of school for that. So he was scrambling for a place to play in 2025, and it happened to be Tulane. So, okay, you got to think probably not again in a million years does a Jake Retzlaff, who was a quarterback for a top 10 team last year, just fall into your lap like that. But he still coached him to his best year, statistically speaking, in his 3 years of college. So, again, BYU to Tulane is a clear step down in competition. But, again, he didn't regress. The interceptions got cut down in half. That's good. The completion percentage improved from below 60 up to 62%. Love all of that stuff. And then, again, there are – how do I put this politically correct? Or not politically incorrect way. Retzlaff, again, I think that there are a lot of unresolved pieces to that story, and somehow his head was kept on straight. Let's just leave it at that. And I think part of that credit needs to go to his coaches at Tulane. Jon Sumrall, of course, one of them, and then of course Joe Craddock, the other one. So there's definitely a bit of mentals that go on with quarterbacks, and Joe Craddock definitely managed that well. We saw that with DJ Lagway this year. His mentals were not there. So that is something that we need to consider as well, that here's this guy coming in from this explosive situation, which, again, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know what actually happened there. Something happened, and clearly the kid's head was not perfect. There was something going on mentally, and Craddock balanced it all out. Or at least there would be something going on mentally with me if I were in that situation. Again, I don't know exactly what happened, but it was messy. Good job by Joe Craddock. I give it a solid B. So, there are questions. Sure, like you said, it's a group of 5 hire. But I think what he did with Retzlaff, bringing him in from BYU, even though, again, he kind of fell into his lap, but then steering him through the murky waters of that difficult situation, at least mentally, keeping his head on straight and getting him to have his best year as a college quarterback. That all counts great for me. So that's a B. Running backs coach, Chris Foster. Here's what we're talking about at the start. Most recently, the running backs coach at Duke, previously had stints at Northwestern and East Carolina. And this is the one I think that where Florida got its 3rd or 4th choice, right? We talked about Robert Gillespie. There was the pretty public courting of Derek Nix at Spurrier's Restaurant. And then there was the desire, at least by me, to go get Tony Alford. So none of that happened. Rumors were they swung on missed on a couple of other guys as well. So that's what I meant at the start. Let's try to put all that aside and just grade this hire in its own context. Adrian, what do you think?
I hear you. But to piggyback based on what you said, this was the one hire out of his entire staff that kind of reminded me of Napier's almost all of his hires. Okay. You heard a bunch of names. It sounded like they were going to get one of this guy, that guy, this guy. It ended up not being none of them. And then he had to settle for somebody that was a lot less known, right? So that was like Billy Napier's entire first staff almost. So this was the one hire that reminded me of that. And, hey, out of what, 12, 13 staff hires to have only one, for that to happen, it's not that bad. With that being said, Duke, very successful offense over there. From everything that I've read, the guy is a very good recruiter. The guy is a good teacher. So I'll give it a solid C for now, and close to C minus, but I'll give it a C. Coming from Duke.
Definitely not a lot of star power names there. Duke, Northwestern, ECU, and those are the best of them. However, he has been around the game for 19 years. Twice he's been nominated for the Broyles Award for the best assistant coach in the country. That was 2020 at Georgia Southern, then again in 2022 at East Carolina. That's 3 times in the last 6 years now, or twice in the last 6 years now, I should say. 3 times in the last 5 years, his leading rusher has rushed for 900 yards or more on the season. So that's Nate Shepard with 962 at Duke this year. Keaton Mitchell at ECU in 2022 went off for 1452. That's 1,452 yards. And the year before that, Mitchell also a solid year there with 946 yards. Of course, Mitchell now is an NFL running back. He's in his 3rd year with the Baltimore Ravens. So, I would have loved to have brought Gillespie home. I would have loved Derek Nix. I would have loved Tony Alford. I'm pretty happy with this one. With all that considered, I'll take it. Now, is it a slam dunk hire? No, it's a little disappointing. But then you look at Mitchell's success. You look at Nate Shepard's success. You see what he's been able to do with the talent he's had. Now you figure, all right, well, if he's able to do that, now he can put the Florida logo on his polo and get some elite talent. I like it, but sure, I would have liked to have seen a better hire. But again, grading this hire in its own context, I don't think it's a terrible one. So I'll go B minus. Okay, wide receivers coach, Marcus Davis. And again, we got to balance the disappointment here of seeing Billy Gonzalez go. I think a lot of us were sad to see him go. Guy did a lot of great things here for 12 years. Just an overall good Gator. Let's try our best to ignore that context and discuss this hire in a vacuum. Marcus Davis comes over from Auburn. He was born and raised in Miami, so he's got connections there. Of course, the big achievement at Auburn, getting 5-star receiver Cam Coleman to the Plains. Adrian, how do you grade this?
Got Coleman there. He got Singleton in there to transfer last year. They just can't seem to get their quarterback right, regardless of what wide receivers they bring into Auburn, which is part of the reason why Hugh Freeze is not there anymore. But, Singleton, some, rumors out there that he might be going into the portal. So, he obviously was at Georgia Tech prior. This is not the portal episode, but this kind of hire kind of also gives me a little bit of that Texas hiring Jaluk type of vibe to maybe help out with Bog. This type of hire is probably going to help you out with Singleton if the Gators want to go that route, which would be an explosive wide receiver core if all those other dominoes fall into place. So we'll see. But just based on this hire, I'm giving this hire a solid B. I like it. You mentioned the South Florida ties. That's going to help. Wide receivers grow on trees. They're from the Palm Beach line down. So that's going to do nothing but help. And seems to be a good coach, man. I like it. A B.
I mean, you're the guy who's from South Florida. You of all people know there's just a different type of athlete there. No disrespect to Jacksonville or Orlando or Tampa or even Gainesville or like the Panhandle for that matter, but something about South Florida is just different. It just is. I'm sorry, but it just is different. And getting a guy with that kind of a tie is pretty big for me. I will go B minus here just because he is still pretty young. There is a lot of success for that short tenure that he's had. I do also give Florida, you know what? I'll up that to a B, actually. I'll give Florida bonus points here for snatching him away from his alma mater. He played at Auburn. He helped get them to a national championship game in 2013, but they lost to FSU, of course, stayed there all 4 years. After 2016, began his coaching career. So he's young. He's only been a coach for 9 years. So like this year, 2025 was his 9th year out of college. So he's still pretty young. But the fact that Florida goes to Auburn next year is going to make, with this guy on now Florida staff, is going to make for quite a nice storyline. But just the raw, impressive shock power that Florida goes and takes away an Auburn grad, a 4-year Auburn letterman and Auburn wide receiver coach to come to Florida. That to me gives you some extra credit. So, and it's for the exact same role at Florida. It's not like Florida offered him a huge promotion, like to an offensive coordinator spot or a head coach even. Obviously, that'd be a huge jump. But Florida got him to take the exact same job that he had at Auburn. So, again, like you said, hard to grade how Auburn's receivers did because they were not helped out by Jackson Arnold. But, again, the fact that he's got connections in Miami and can recruit there pretty well now with the Gator logo on his polo gives me a lot of reason for optimism. So I'll say B. Okay, tight end coach Evan McKissick. This is a wild card for me. Comes over from Tulane. There's some stuff I like. There's some stuff I have a lot of questions about. I'll let you go first.
What did he coach at Tulane? He was the
offensive line.
O-line coach, huh?
He was the offensive line. So nod to Billy Napier, Sunbelt Billy and the boys. Florida, again, has 2 offensive line coaches. not really.
Coaches. You know, and of course, you started hearing all the stuff on the social medias about, I thought Sumrall wasn't going to hire his friends, you know? So you started seeing that also, especially once like McKissick was announced as tight end. I believe that day a lot of the off-field guys also came down from Tulane, like the GM was announced also to help out here and all that stuff. But, you know, of course, these people hire people that they're familiar with. All coaches do, okay? Now, the problem with Gator Nation right now is that we're suffering from a thing called PTSD, and I could read you the definition, but go ahead and Google it. Post-traumatic stress disorder. You could call it post-Napier stress disorder. So right now, anything that looks like something Billy would have done, even though it's probably something that a lot of coaches do, all right, immediately Gator Nation starts freaking out, you know? So coaches are going to hire people that, A, they've worked with, they've had relationships with, and most importantly, probably that they feel could teach, okay, the system that they want implemented. All right. So you have this guy who was the offensive line coach. Hey, tight end works hand in hand with the O-line. All right. And we have the O-line coach that we're going to talk about next, I am sure. But for this one, kind of a weird hire. I get it. Could there have been others out there? Who knows? It looks like Sumrall's comfortable with it. I'm going to go ahead and give it a C for now, and we'll see how that plays out. But like I said, the thing here is if you see that this will be the difference between Sumrall and like a Napier and even a Dan Mullen, right? If he hires this guy to be his tight ends coach and the tight ends visibly are having a bad season, are not producing, are whatever, are missing blocks, missing assignments, however they grade, then make the change. Like I said, there's a couple of these guys that are going to be bust no matter what. If this is one of them, then make the change after year 1. After year 1, 2 of these guys should be fired. Okay? That's a healthy coaching staff probably. 2 of these guys are going to be mistakes. Why? Because no one's perfect. I don't expect Sumrall to go 1, 2, 3, 4, to go 13 for 13. All right? That's impossible. No one goes 13 for 13. Not even Joe DiMaggio. All right? Nobody. All right? So 2 of these guys should get fired. If that's McKissick, good deal. Sumrall did his job. We'll see. If he keeps them, then I'll entertain some of your friends' posts. But until then, I'm giving my man a C, and hopefully we'll see how the tight ends do.
Yeah, I think that there's a big difference between hiring your friends and hiring people you were previously coworkers with. Why were you previously coworkers with them? Not because you were friends, but because you thought they were the best people for the job. I think there's a big difference between those 2 things. So I don't know a whole lot about McKissick, and I will be honest, the more I Googled, the more research I did, the more questions I have. Here's what I found. Here's what we do know. The positive is that McKissick was part of a historic team at Troy in 2023. He was part of the offensive staff at Troy that ranked 2nd in the Sun Belt in passing yards per completion, 5th in total offense, 5th in passing offense, and 6th in scoring. And thanks in large part to that offense, Troy finished the year ranked in a major poll for the first time ever, which looks great. Then you balance that with the fact that Troy's tight ends only caught 7% of those passing yards, or 260 of those 37-24. And okay, that takes a lot of the bite out of it. So, to be fair, tight ends also block, and blocking is obviously a very big part of what makes a passing game tick. So, these guys were winding up blocking for the offense that wound up throwing for 3,724 yards. Okay, that's cool. Then he goes to Tulane, and now he is the offensive line coach there, as opposed to the tight ends coach at Troy. Now he's the co-OC and offensive line coach at Tulane, and his line is blocking. And that means that, again, that's a large part of why Jake Retzloff throws for the 3,168 passing yards that he threw for in 2025. So, like I said a minute ago, kind of jokingly, I guess we once again have 2 offensive line coaches at Florida, only this time one of them is actually coaching the offensive line while the other one is coaching the tight ends at Florida to be additional offensive linemen who just happen to be pass catching eligible players. So I guess I have to give this a kind of neutral grade. It could wind up being a home run hire. It might wind up being a gigantic success. It could be a bust. But again, worth noting, he is taking a step down from the co-offensive coordinator tag. He is just the tight ends coach here. And I don't hate having a guy who's coached both the offensive line and the tight ends before coaching the tight ends, especially at Florida, where Adrian, stop me if you've heard this one before. Florida has this guy named Dallas Wilson. Florida has this guy named Vernell Brown. Florida had these guys last year. Florida had a fan base that was screaming bloody murder for those guys to get the freaking ball more. Why the wide receivers were not the focal part of the passing game was a mystery that eluded even the most knowledgeable of Florida fans out there. So maybe the point of having this guy here is not to have someone become the next Hayden Hansen. Maybe it's to have tight ends that just happen to be 6th and 7th offensive linemen for a Florida passing attack that utilizes those downfield weapons that they have in VB3 and Dallas Wilson. Assuming both of those guys come back, I have heard some good things, but I'm far from willing to go out and call my shot on this one here. Just going to have to wait and see. But regardless, Florida should be a downfield passing offense, whether or not they keep those 2 guys or have to go into the portal to replace them. And in that case, the tight ends are going to have to do their job pass blocking. So I'm tempted to give the neutral grade of a C here, but because of those things, I'll up it to a B-. So I think it could be a great hire. Frankly, I don't care if the tight ends don't catch a damn ball in 2025, as long as they do their jobs in pass pro and they don't commit any crippling penalties, like not the hustle ones that you'll live with, like the guys just not letting go and it's a holding call, but the pre-snap penalties, the false start, the illegal motion, the illegal formation, like none of that. As long as they don't hurt the team and do their jobs as pass blockers, I'm fine with it. So that brings us to the actual offensive line coach, Phil Trautwein. Here's the one that's generated the most buzz this offseason. I think even more so than the 2 coordinators. 2-time national champion at Florida, 2006 and 2008, had a lot of success for Penn State as a recruiter and a developer of talent, and Florida brought him home. Adrian, what do you think?
Yeah, man, rumored to have been coming to Florida. Like, I remember during Mullen's time, that was rumored like a little bit. Never happened, man. So the fan base has always wanted him back. In my opinion, if there was any position that you needed to have an A+ hire in besides your coordinators, this was one of them. Our O-line has been just underperforming, underachieving, even though we had an All-American. Still, it's been a problem. I think it could be a very big problem next year. Hopefully it's addressed in the portal. We'll talk about that later on in the off season here when we preview spring and all that. But listen, A+ hire, man. for everything you've said, being a Gator, everything. I think he's one of the top, 3, 4, 5 offensive line coaches in college football. So how could it not be an A-plus hire? Slam dunk, A-plus.
Yeah, as you all know, I'm very stingy with my A-plus grades. I have been for anything we ever do grades for, whether it's hires or results on the field, like for the final word after games. I don't give A-pluses unless I really do not think anything could possibly have been any better. And I think that's how you describe this hire. I genuinely believe that this is the best hire Florida could have possibly made. And it's not just because of the success he had at Penn State, which is pretty noteworthy in its own. I'll get to that in a second. But you brought a Gator legend home. All SEC selection, 2-time national champion. And don't fool yourself into thinking that that's just like a bit of Rainbow Land pixie dust fantasy. There's a lot of value for that. Not for the fans who've, as you mentioned, been begging for their voices to be heard by a Florida staff for a decade and a half now. It is a lot of value for recruits. Troutwine has been very successful as a recruiter already with a logo that's not his own. He went out with Penn State, got Javen Williams, who is a 5-star prospect who's now got some very strong NFL draft stock. Landon Tengwall, who is a very high 4-star prospect, borderline 5-star. I thought had a 5-star offer list. I really wanted Florida to get him. Unfortunately, he had to retire due to an injury, but that's obviously not Troutwine's fault. The point is he went out and he got him. He won that battle for him. Also got Malachi Goodman, another 5-star offensive line prospect. Also got Alex Birchmeyer and Cooper Cousins to sign with Penn State, both of whom were ranked in the top 3 in the country at their respective offensive line positions. And again, that's all with a logo that is not his own. Now he's going out recruiting with a logo that he once wore himself on the field. He can now go into top recruits' living rooms and say, we can win national championships together. I know because I've done it here. Follow me, and you can do it too. A-plus hire. Couldn't possibly be any happier with this. Okay, defensive line. Wasn't really a hire so much as it was a retention. Gerald Chapman, worth noting, Florida did get him from Tulane originally, but that was before Jon Sumrall got there, so no, they did not actually overlap. So what do you think of Gerald Chapman staying on and, well, not even staying on, but being given the assistant head coach title on top of it?
Yeah, good little promotion thing for him there for the title. He probably got a little bit of a pay bump. Good for him. Hey, man, D-line's been a strong suit of this team, since he's been here. He's a good recruiter. Sumrall decided to have some continuity there on the defensive side. He's a defensive guy too, man. So if he retains a defensive guy on the defensive side, a coach, it tells you something that he thought good about him, man, because he knows defense, obviously. So I liked it. Everybody seemed to be happy with this retention here. The fan base seemed to be on board with it. The media folks, the podcasting folks, So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give it a solid B+.
Okay. All right. Look, I think it's no secret by now to anyone who's followed me on social media or watched this podcast that I hate Billy Napier. Like I really do. I don't respect him as a coach at all. I think that he was the cataclysmic failure that his record says he was. But I will give him credit for one thing. He put together a lot of talent in that front seven on his defense. And now Florida's staff appears to have been retaining it. That goes for the linebackers, like we talked about at the start of the show, with Aaron Chiles, Miles Graham, and Jaden Robinson. That goes for the defensive line last year. Now, Florida is going to lose some guys. Obviously, Caleb Banks didn't even play last year. But Gerald Chapman had this defensive line unit, I think, as the steadiest unit on the entire team for Florida last year. I mean, there were some growing pains that the linebackers went through. I mean, we talked about the continuity and the growth from year to year, and it's pretty clear to me that there's going to be a step up as long as they all stay healthy in 2026. But the defensive line unit under Chapman was really good in his 2 years here. I mean, first in 2024, when you have Tyreek Sapp and George Gums who wound up staying, of course, for the next year too. But on top of those guys, you also have the health of Caleb Banks, or the healthy Caleb Banks. You have Cam Jackson. You have Jack Pyburn, who, 550K, I think is kind of a joke, but throw that aside. You had a lot of talent that was amassed there before Chapman got there, and then he developed them into a very strong unit in 2024. I think that keeping him on is not one that's just for continuity. I think it's one that rewards him for having that year-over-year improvement, especially when they were okay but not great in 2023. And with virtually the same guys, they flip the page and become a terrifying unit. And then last year, despite those losses, essentially just two of the guys that they thought they were going to wind up having last year in Gums and Sapp, still having a very good unit, probably the best on the team again last year. So that's a reward for him for being the stalwart of the staff, for continuing to produce good units. And I think he has earned that little promotion as well. So he's going to get an A-. That higher.
One last thing on him, man. He also got about 2 or 3 true freshmen ready to play some significant snaps this year because of those injuries, man. All right, so kudos to him. It's not easy to get true freshmen to play in the interior of that defensive line in the SEC, and he got not one, not two, but I think 3, 2 or 3. So, yeah, definitely.
All right, outside linebackers, and here we bring another Gator home. Bam Hardman got some all-SEC consideration, got honorable mention in 2002 at Florida. He was at Troy for a very long time, 2015 to 2023. Jon Sumrall made the choice to retain him when he first got there, and then he brought him along to Tulane with him. Now he comes home to Florida. Adrian, what do you think?
Yeah. It tells you something about when you get retained by like 2 or 3, 4 different coaches, man. He was at Troy for a long time, okay? So it tells you that he's a loyal guy. He puts his head down. He works. There's a change in the coaching staff. New coach comes in, taps him as somebody that I want to keep around on my staff and retains him. And it's happened to him 2 or 3, 4 different times already. So that says a lot about him, dude. Also says a lot about the way he coaches, but people want to be around this guy, okay, and want to keep him on board. Gator, a guy also rumored to maybe have been on Mullen's staff a couple of times, but you know what? Finally got him on board. I called this one early on, okay, and sure as heck, man, that's why that linebacker spot hadn't been filled yet. We were waiting for the Tulane season to finish. And this is a slam dunk, man. Get Bam home, and he's got some good players to work with too.
So your grade?
Oh, my grade, a solid A, man. I'm giving it an A.
I mean, to me, a former Gator football player, a former good Gator football player, I need a reason to not want them back. Like, instead of me being needed to be sold on them, I would need a reason to be sold on them not coming to Florida. So does that mean we should just hire former Gators everywhere we look? No, obviously not. If the resume is not there, it's just not there. And you can't justify a bad resume for a spot on a coaching staff in Florida. But former successful Gator football players just have a leg up on everyone else for me when it comes to looking at their resumes. And of course, they can be won or lost once you start scouring those. But I like it. I think it's another instance of a guy taking a step down in responsibilities from Tulane to Florida. He was the run game coordinator for the defense, also worked a bit with the linebackers and the bandits, kind of the hybrid positions there. And now he's coming to Florida just to work with the outside linebackers. So because of that, I really, really like this hire. Had he been coming to Florida to take on more responsibilities, I'd probably give this a solid B hire. But because, again, he is taking a little bit less responsibility so he can learn the SEC game from a coaching perspective as opposed to obviously being on the field playing it, I think that's a great thing for the future for Florida and could build some continuity, could set him up to be promoted from within should, let's say, Brad White wind up leaving for a head job someday, because he is still pretty young, Brad White. So I'm going to give this an A-. I really, really like it. Middle linebackers, or the inside linebackers. Greg Gasparato led a very high-performing Troy defense in 2023 that set program single-season sack records and ranked pretty well across the board across defensive categories. Adrian, what grade do you give this?
Yeah, man. Again, this is a lot very similar to the quarterback coach, right? Defense coordinator takes a step down in his role. Now he's only going to be in charge of the inside linebackers. Quite a crew he's got to work with there, so I'm sure he's happy as soon as he popped that film in. And Aaron Chiles made his decision, although Aaron Chiles plays on the outside some also. But listen, I think this is a great hire. Again, he could also tutelage under White, and it gives you a couple of options there with Bam and with this guy to go ahead and take over as DC if Brad White decides to go ahead and take a head coaching gig somewhere. So good hire. I give it a solid B+.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I don't love it, but I'm fine with it. Because anytime you have the best anything in the history of Troy football, it's not really a high bar, but it typically implies a really good job was done. So I will say that this does kind of fly in the face of the I don't hire my friends narrative with all the guys he's bringing over from Tulane and Troy. But then again, like we also touched on, maybe he's not actually friends with any of them and just has good working relationships. Then there's the point of continuity that you bring with, and the fact that having good working relationships with these guys, which is the case in pretty much any business anywhere, is a pretty good key to success. So I'm fine with it. I don't know exactly how well what he did at Troy would translate to Florida. I think that there were some questions at Tulane as well, but I'll give this a B- again for the continuity reason and the fact that, again, he's only responsible for the middle linebackers and Bam Harbin works with the outside linebackers. Gasparato, again, there's something to be said for what he did at Troy, but it's also Troy. So you got to kind of balance the two, and that's where I get the B- grade. Okay, corners. Brandon Harris, previously the defensive backs coach at Central Florida. FSU wanted him. It seemed like they were going to get him. Florida said, no, you're not, and just came in and took him away, which is absolutely hilarious. But Adrian, how do you grade this hire?
Yeah, FSU was announcing the hire. Well, the FSU podcasts were announcing the hire just like the day before. Great. Yeah, man. So that was funny. Listen, South Florida guy, Trey Harris is not Trey Harris, Treon, right? Treon. Yeah. Treon Harris's little brother. He is the son of a South Florida coaching legend, former Booker T. Washington head coach down there. I believe Al Harris is his first name, or Mr. Harris. So yeah, South Florida ties, corner, just like the wide receivers. They grow them on trees down there from the Palm Beach line down. So I'm sure this guy could recruit. And you know, hey, he was a very good player. We were in on him big time as a player. It came down to us and Miami, and I remember him very clearly. And he picked Miami. He went ahead and stayed home. So I like it. I'm gonna give it a B, solid B.
Yeah. So for me, there's the bonus points for the FU to our friends in Tallahassee. Because just think about how that all plays out. They fire Patrick Surtain, which, for starters, I think that's a mistake on its own, frankly. But whatever. They fire Surtain because I don't think Surtain was the problem. But they fire Surtain. They target Harris. They think they got him. They don't got him. That's absolutely hysterical. As you mentioned, the FSU podcast people are talking like they've already got him. They're preparing their graphics. Some of them are talking about, yeah, what color should I use for the background? Should we make this like a garnet or should we make this a gold background? I don't know. Well, because the last hire we did, or the last graphic we did was gold, so maybe we make this one garnet. Like, you idiots are already making party celebration plans when you don't have this at all finalized. So that's hysterical. But okay, anyway, top 25 passing defense at Central Florida this season, even as the Golden Knights were just an absolute disaster of a team. Still, for that one bright spot to be there, that's a pretty good sign. He's been a co-DC before at Florida Atlantic. That's good experience to have. I give this another B-, except the bonus points for the middle finger to FSU bumps this up to a B. Chris Collins, the safety coach, spent the last 5 years at Kentucky when Kentucky pretty much owned Florida, mind you. Adrian, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one that, as a few of these are, I put in the category of, if it wasn't for Billy Napier post-derangement disorder that the fan base has, we would be saying, man, this is great hires. This is keeping continuity, guys that people have worked with, that they could teach, they could show their system. And in my opinion, that's very important right now, because you got guys coming into your system every year. Every year you have a new team. You got the portal, you got people leaving, you got people coming in, you got freshmen coming in, you got freshmen leaving. I mean, the whole nine. So you need probably more than recruiters now, okay? You need people that could teach the system that you want to implement. Okay, so now more important than ever is to have continuity in your coaching staff, people you are comfortable working with, not people that you're just getting to know, that they're coming onto your staff for the first time and you're getting to feel them out, they're feeling you out. There's no time for that. Why? Because there's a whole bunch of players that have to learn the system for the first time, okay, because they portaled in. Okay, so this is the type of hire. Brad White probably handpicked this guy to take care of his secondary while he's implementing the rest of that defense. Makes perfect sense to me, man. And on that alone, I'm giving it a B. On that alone, man. Continuity in the secondary. And like you said, a secondary that dominated the heck out of us probably has like about 20 picks against us in like the last 5 years.
Well, there's the continuity aspect, and then there's the aspect of they dominated us, but they didn't really dominate a whole lot of other teams. The overall stats at Kentucky are very suspicious, let's just say. Maxwell Hairston's the big analysis piece here. That's the biggest selling point for Chris Collins. He coached him for 4 years, got him to be a first-round pick with the Buffalo Bills. That's the first Kentucky DB to be a first-round NFL draft pick ever, so that's pretty cool. Also worked a bit with Carrington Valentine, now in his third year with the Green Bay Packers, so that's now 2 bona fide NFL players that he has gotten to work with at Kentucky, which, again, is, historically speaking, a bottom-feeder SEC program, so that's nice. Again, the overall ranks for his pass defense at Kentucky are not great. So there's a lot to be desired there overall. They did some good things. Again, there were the games against Florida where they looked like they were all Americans there, but this is probably my lowest grade just because the sum of the data, it leaves questions. So I'll give it a C+, which is a little bit higher than my neutral average grade. It's not a failing grade because of what you said. Again, Brad White probably handpicked him to take care of his secondary. I get it. There's something to be said for the continuity, for the good relationships that coaches have. Not necessarily the friendships, but again, the good working relationships. Some guys just know how to make each other's units better, and they know how to work together well, which of course benefits us. So I don't hate it. I just have a lot of questions. And he's also going to have some help with Daewon Wilkins coaching the nickels too. So that'll be nice. All right. Jonathan Galante, special teams coach. We're not going to call him a game changer because that's, I think, kind of in the same vein as coaches wearing black. So just, the Billy Napier PTSD. But Jonathan Galante is Florida special teams coordinator. Adrian, what say you about this hire?
Yeah. He came from Tulane, right? He came from Tulane.
Yes.
Yeah, so the kicker, the punter, they were all conference, both of them,
Yep.
Wasn't a comedy of errors as far as I could tell, on special teams. So, as far as I'm concerned, I give it an A-. Why not? He's got a couple of all-conference guys on his unit, so I'll give it an A-.
I agree with you on the A- grade. Also worth noting, he was a Broyles finalist. Again, we talked about that earlier with Chris Foster, the running backs coach, having gotten that nomination in 2020 at Georgia Southern and 22 at East Carolina. He got it, or Galante got it last year at Tulane. So that's good. That means we finally have an on-field special teams coordinator this year. So hopefully, and again, this is a Billy Napier PTSD thing, but assuming that we are able to correctly count to 11 and able to run onto the field and execute a field goal fire drill correctly without triggering their substitution infraction and a 5-yard penalty, assuming that we can cross those very low thresholds, or those very low bars, let's see if we can get back to the days of returning punts or kicks for touchdowns or blocking kicks or punts. Now, to ask to do that at the rate that they did it under Urban Meyer is asking for a bit much, but let's see Florida do it sometimes. I mean, I think when Taylor Spirito blocked the punt for a safety against Texas, I think the reaction among a lot of Florida Gator fans was, wait, we're allowed to do that again? I thought like that became illegal after Muschamp, they were decent, but I thought that became illegal like 10 years ago. Like I forgot that was even something that was kosher in the game of football now. The reaction for something like that needs to be, yes, let's go, special team strikes again, as opposed to just sheer disbelief that it happened. And I think that can happen. Like you said, there's a lot to like about him, having the specialist that he had at Tulane. Obviously, he inherited those guys, but again, he was at Marshall before that. But again, something to be said for having very good, consistent performances throughout the year. So I like it, A-. We're going to wrap up this episode with the strength coach, Rusty Witt. He has previously worked for Tulane, as has been a pattern in the show. A lot of guys coming from Tulane. He has also worked with the literal Army, and he has a lot of military experience in his background. So right away, that got my attention. Adrian, what do you think?
Yeah. He was in the Army. He was Special Forces. He served in Iraq, has a bunch of medals from Iraqi freedom and all that good stuff back there. Special Forces, he set up the training regimen on the conditioning side for pre-deployment for the Special Forces unit that he was on. So, I mean, heck, he comes from Tulane, right? He comes from Tulane. Again, I remember Urban Meyer saying that the best relationship that a head coach has to have is with his strength and conditioning guy, because he hands over the keys to the program to his strength and conditioning guy when the season's over. And
the head coach of the offseason.
Yeah, this team is yours, and you give them back to me come April. So basically, you got to have continuity and trust in your strength and conditioning guy, and that's what he has in this guy. Looks very impressive as far as his background's concerned. Doesn't get more impressive than that. I'm a little concerned maybe about the strength aspect of it, the conditioning, Special Forces. Yeah, that's going to be slam dunk. The strength aspect, we'll see how that goes, obviously. But as far as everything else, man, I give it a solid B+.
God, this hire reminds me a little bit of his basketball counterpart, Victor Lopez. Todd Golden hired him in part because he once served in the United States Marine Corps. So there's a theme developing, and we're going to talk basketball a little bit more as the season heats up a little bit more, but I don't think that the strength and conditioning has been a problem for Gator basketball. Like, we've seen Ruben Chinyelu get stronger in the paint this offseason. That's clearly on Victor Lopez. There's something that was done there that worked out well. So obviously they're different guys, Marine Corps, Special Forces, U.S. Army. They're different, but at the same time, there are also a lot of commonalities there. These guys are not going to be messing around when it comes to strength and conditioning. You respect the fact that they serve the country, yes. You also respect the pure fact that they underwent the physical and mental strength, sharpen, like the mental sharpening skills that you have to go through in order to do that. It's not for everyone to be able to go serve our country. It's not for me. I'm not cut out for that. So you are. Chris Urich, who does the baseball pod for you, is, but it's not for everyone. So there's a lot of respect that has to come with knowing that someone who's putting himself in that position and then goes and trains others to do it too, taking over the Florida program. Now, to be fit for the Army and for the Marine Corps and for the United States military is not the same thing as being fit for an SEC football player. again, a lot of commonalities. Sure, pure strength is a must, but there are different moves you have to make. Obviously, for defensive linemen, you're going to want to work on your pass rushing moves, right? So your arms, your biceps are going to be a little bit more important on some days than they are for, say, running backs. Now, again, running backs who can bench and curl 500 pounds, or not curl, but bench 500 pounds is great. We saw Jaden Ball do that. That's fantastic. That gives me a lot of confidence in him running the football. But again, there's just a difference there between having a wide receiver, let's say, working on his curls versus a defensive lineman who's always in the trenches with his hands, grappling and trying to establish some space there. So I like it. I think there's a lot to like about Rusty Witt. I think, again, the military service is huge. I do kind of wonder how that's going to translate to the SEC. He hasn't had a job really like this, but I think it could be a very good hire for Florida. I am very, very optimistic about it. I will give it an A-. With that said, Adrian, actually, before we wrap up, I don't think we actually graded the Florida coordinators. So let's do that real quick. Brad White, defensive coordinator, what do you give him as a hire?
Brad White, I gave it I thought we graded it the last show on that. Maybe, but I'll give it a B+. I'm giving Brad White a B+. I like that hire more than others, Some others thought maybe, especially once Knowles got hired at Tennessee, people were like, damn, was he available? But I like Brad White hire, man. I'm giving it a B+.
I agree. I think it's a B+. I think that Kentucky's defense, the way you put it, was they were just salty. They're just mean and angry, and they play that way. And Florida really felt that. I think and no better example of that with 2023, where Ray Davis, obviously the game that he runs for 1 billion yards on us, but Florida couldn't really move the ball a lot that game. I mean, they had a couple of nice drives here and there, but they were, for the most part, they held to 14 points on the day, and they looked lost on the road in that environment. Part of that was just not ready for the crowd environment, which, again, of 62,000 or whatever, that's a really bad sign. But Kentucky's defense also did its part that day. So I remember that. I respect him for that. And again, as is the case with the safety coach that we brought over, the numbers aren't overall fantastic, but they're good enough that I can say, all right, this might be a good idea. This could work out very well. Buster Faulkner, offensive coordinator, probably saved the best for last. What say you?
Yeah, Buster Faulkner. I mean, everything that, even after the hire, more stuff that I've heard, more stuff that I've read, I like to hire more and more. I would be just absolutely shocked beyond belief if this doesn't turn out to be just a slam dunk monster hire for the next 2 years. The Florida offense really rolls. The only thing that could somewhat sabotage it, besides the obvious thing of big injuries to big players and stuff like that, but is the offensive line. They need to figure out that offensive line, and we'll talk about that on other shows. But this is an A+ hire. This guy, the more I researched and looked into him and saw things and saw people talking about him, A+ hire. This guy is the real deal.
Yeah, A+. Again, that's 2 A+, and I don't give a lot of them, but I really struggle to figure out how this hire could have been any better. Maybe if you poach a Chip Kelly, or if you get a Brian Hartline to come to Florida and not take the USF head coaching job, maybe that's better. But realistically, this is about as good as you could do.
I would take Faulkner definitely above Hartline. Chip Kelly, I would still take him above Chip Kelly. But I see your point. But yeah, man. But
it's very, very difficult to imagine a hire that could have been better.
I think any better hire than him is a head coach somewhere, either in college or in the NFL. How about that? Or maybe an NFL OC, maybe one of those guys from like Philly or whatever. But I
mean, we broke down what he did on the last show or a couple shows ago now. But he's got the air raid in his background. I thought that could have worked with Lagway. I thought he could have potentially coached him out of his mental issues, but obviously he's not going to have the chance now. But I think that he's the kind of coordinator that can work well with a lot of different quarterbacks. And we know that because he, again, with the air raid in his background, goes and coaches Haynes King, who is very much not an air raid quarterback, but coaches him to a lot of success. I wouldn't say Stetson Bennett is an air raid guy. He was good. He did what he had to do for Georgia. He's not a Chase Daniel. He's not one of those Sam Bradford type. He's not going to be throwing the ball for 500 yards a game. So I think he's very adaptable to the personnel he's got. And
Big time.
Right. So now we've got the buzz about Aaron Philo coming over. We've got the buzz about Rocco Becht coming over. Are those guys traditional air raid guys that can throw for 1 billion yards? Probably not. But I think he can have a lot of success with them.
So overall great.
Overall great. That's a good way to cap the show. Overall great. I think that this staff is teetering between a B+ and an A-. I am having a difficult time deciding which one. I am having a very I will go A-. Tiebreaker goes to just flipping off FSU with that move of Brandon Harris, and you get that out of here. No.
Yeah.
Just the imagery that comes with that hire, like just the painful feelings you send over to Tallahassee, that pushes it over the edge for me. A-.
Yeah, somebody on Twitter, and man, I wish I remember who it was. I think it was maybe Astute Gator who put some good stuff on there. I think he said that. I think it was him, but someone said that this is the best staff first season that a coach has put together since Muschamp's first staff. So and that made sense to me. I was right there with you. A-, B+. I'm just gonna give it a B+ just to be different. Okay, but right there, B+.
It's on the fringe. It's on the border between the two.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it B+. You gave it A-. I think it's a very, very, very good staff. I'm really excited with it. I love the route they took with Caldwell. He wasn't part of this grading system here, but I love the route that they took with Caldwell, having to be an NFL type of approach that he learned from Howie Roseman, how to do that. So I like it. A lot of optimism. I'm feeling really good about this team going into spring ball. We'll see what the portal holds. That's going to be huge. Remember the portal, January 2nd to January 16th. You need to be in the portal during that time. But you could be in the portal and then pick a team sometime in late January. I think Florida, though, Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to be in by a certain day because of drop ad, right?
Yeah.
The drop ad period and stuff like that.
Logistically. I mean, there's always a waiver possibility, but realistically, there's the ad drop period.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to know what this team looks like by January 16th.
No, yeah, January 16th, probably the 20th, maybe something like that. But we're gonna know because there's no spring portal. Hey, if they have a good portal, we talked about that schedule. It looks very manageable. I'm feeling good about that schedule. So we'll see how some of those teams do in the portal. So, but that's for other shows, man.
And I will say to wrap the show, this is going to be the year in which Florida should rely on the portal the hardest, because after this, you need to be developing your own guys that you recruit in high school. And look at Miami as an example of that. You got guys like Ruben Bain and Malachi Toney and Mark Fletcher and Francis Maligoa, who were all head-to-head wins for Miami over Florida, some of which came down to the end, some of which Florida was never really because Miami beat them out right at the very start of the process.
Did you mention Pancake Man, Samson?
He hasn't really done a whole lot yet. But
I think he plays interior.
He's played, but the four guys I mentioned have been much heavier. And Bryce Fitzgerald, who ended the game with the interception for them too.
Two picks.
Those are right. He had 2 picks that game too. Those guys were all high school guys that they got. So it just goes to show you can use the portal as a supplementary piece, like Carson Beck. Obviously, CJ Daniels. Those guys have absolutely played roles. But you have to start with your high school recruiting. So this is going to be a one-time deal where Florida basically just gets most of its new guys, its new faces who star for the team from the portal. Some, sure, will be part of the future teams. But that's, again, supposed to be a Band-Aid. That's supposed to be supplementary pieces. It's not supposed to be the crux of your roster. All right, we've been on this for an hour and a quarter. It's been fun talking to you, Adrian, but we got to have mercy on our graphics guy, Dustin. And on the audience, we appreciate you all staying with us for all these coaching breakdowns and grades. If you liked what we did, please give us a thumbs up, a like, leave a comment, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe on YouTube. All that stuff helps us bring y'all more great Gators content. Until next time, y'all, Merry Christmas from Neil Shulman, from Adrian Perez, from Dustin Smith, and a happy belated Hanukkah to fellow members of the tribe as well. Dustin, Adrian, it's been a pleasure doing stuff with y'all this year. This is probably the last show we'll do unless we get some Jaden Ball news in the next couple of days, but been fun doing stuff with y'all this year. Can't wait to see what the next year holds in store. Until next time, go Gators in all kinds of weather. We will see you again very soon to break down the latest on the Florida Gators in the transfer portal. And those who are not in the transfer portal, those who are coming back, stay tuned for that. Go Gators.
Merry Christmas.